the South Node. It is an opportunity for a lot of clarity. It's an opportunity for a lot of healing. It's deeply karmic in terms of what's holding you back and what actions, as well as essentially what routines you're hyper motivated to dibble and dabble in are, like that's pretty much what's holding you back. So we're gonna dive into it. We're gonna talk about how it isn't exactly just time for work. We're gonna talk about how it's time for more of a spiritual detox through your daily systems and understanding that what's going on and how you're experiencing it isn't everything that it's cracked up to be. And you don't exactly have to be, dibbling and dabbling into what's holding you back. So with that being said, let me get down the what's the word? Let me get down the timestamps so I don't gotta go back and watch too much later. So yeah. Now, what this transit means is, if we're going to break it down in a very basic setting, is we're dealing with Mars. Mars is your action, willpower, and basically any emotion that convinces you to be like, yes, like this is what I want to do. This is I have to do it right now. Your South Node is the past, karmic baggage, things you're good at and you're comfortable with but aren't helping you with your spiritual growth, and a lot of unconscious habits, right? So that plus Virgo, which is your health, your rituals, your routines, your patterns, and your kind of like purification process of like what works and what doesn't. That plus Mars in the South Node is pushing you into a space where you're kind of like returning to old work patterns, you're returning to old routines. You're kind of realizing what's sacred, what's toxic, what triggers you, what needing to be useful and needing to be perfect, and sort of like feeling just doing it to feel productive rather than producing an actual result is essentially what's going on with this transit. It's a bit interesting in terms of how it holds you back and what's going on, because people confuse a lot of people do a lot of work just to be busy, and they don't exactly do it to be productive or be, abundant, right? So when we're dealing with this South Node conjunction, it is essentially like it's just something that's like kind of holding you back, and you don't exactly realize how it's holding you back, right? And what that kind of leads to eventually is a lot of things like hidden burnouts are surfacing through your body or your mood, and they are positioning you to not exactly be as abundant as you could be. So, what this kind of looks like is, if you are dealing with something and you're dealing with a lot of that Virgo energy, a lot of this comes through your nervous system. A lot of this comes through your experience. A lot of this comes through your all these emotions and energies that are built up through what's going on, right? So when it comes to that energy of how people are experiencing this, you have to think about that your bloodline was essentially born into a karmic loop of fixing everything except yourself, right? So you're trying to fix what's outside of you, you're trying to fix what you're experiencing, and you're not exactly opening yourself up to the fact that your vibrations, and what your nervous system is attuned to is what's holding you back, and why you keep attracting yourself into these karmic loops, right? Which is why we're dealing with Mars conjunct the South Node in Virgo. Now, this is essentially going to be transiting through, for me, I'm in the West. I think a lot of you are in like India and Pakistan and all that stuff. But for, my side of the hemisphere, we are experiencing this all the way from, we're experiencing this from July 14th all the way through the 20th, and it'll kind of be bouncing around the range of 14 all the way through I guess like 20 degrees, mainly focusing around 17 degrees of Virgo. And what's interesting is it is pretty much like it's essentially oscillating on the Canis Vinici constellation. It's bouncing between Boots and then Canis Vinici. So the Boots constellation is essentially the divine protector or the divine shepherd, and it deals with a lot of like responsibility and internalization of what's going on. And then Canis Vinici, which is the two lesser dogs, it's kind of dealing with the vibration of you guys are feeling like there's a little like yap 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 like holding you back. And oh, what's going on from yesterday, dog? And people are kind of dealing with that sort of like yap yap of what they feel like they have to do, and they're not necessarily recognizing. Everybody like the live, please. And everybody's not necessarily recognizing what's going on. I'm talking about Mars retrograde in Virgo, conjuncting the South Node, or I always forget which one's Rahu or Ketu, but yeah, one of them, right? So when we're dealing with this energy and we're talking about it, we're kind of dealing with like old karmic patterns. We're dealing with the concept of what people are doing out of the sake of busyness rather than productivity. So what this looks like is people are understanding. Oh man, so you're dealing with an opposition. Interesting. So yeah, it's gonna come through, your home and your family and what you're comfortable with for you. So what essentially we're dealing with regarding these energies is they're recognizing the difference between busyness and actual success, and they're coming to realize on a deeper level that they are whatever traumas are stored in their nervous system, whether that be through karmic or that be through some type of like you know like upbringing or trauma, whatever is stored in their nervous system is continuously attracting that same situation back into their lives, right? So whatever you feel like you have to do, and whatever you need to like cut off and release is something that people are essentially going to be dealing with, right? And it may get as complicated as people are, they're resonating with the vibration of, say, like, or not resonating with the vibration of, but they are experiencing the energy of it manifesting physically, whatever pain is like literally in their nervous system that they just need to get out. And like honestly, like this comes back to a lot of things that they should do. Like, for example, what I recommend people do, especially if it's like in their 12th house or they're dealing with like subconscious energies, they need to put their feet in some type of stream and imagine all of those subconscious energies, emotions, and ideas being washed down the current. And if it's really bad, you need to get into a waterfall and do some like waterfall magic and just release all that stuff. You know what I'm saying? So with that being said, it's kind of along the lines of, well, you're here, so just keep listening and you'll figure it out. But when we move on to the shadow side of Mercury conjuncting the South Node, so yeah, what is it? 750. Okay. So when we're dealing with the shadow side of Mercury, conjuncting the South Node in Virgo, between July 14th and 20th, around 17 degrees of Virgo, which angles the combination of the Boots constellation as well as the Canis Venici's constellation. Some of the basics is like we're dealing with hyper criticism, micromanaging, over analyzing to avoid action, emotional numbness through busyness, running back to safe routines that kind of block growth, right? So what this comes back to is it's essentially what I was saying, where it's not a performance review, it's a nervous system review, where you are taking the time to take a step back, sit, observe, and really experience the either traumas or karmic relationships that are stuck in your nervous system. And how you get out of it and properly observe it is through where the North Node is at, which is in Pisces. So spending time in water, doing lots of meditations, going through the experience of where you can properly observe and step out of those patterns that produce a certain level of busyness rather than productivity, right? So essentially what it's doing is you are observing old patterns. I think you're only saying that because you may not be a native English speaker, since most people here are from like India and whatnot. But back to, oh, I like that name, See For Yourself. But yeah, so essentially what's going on is people need to understand. So what I recommend for people that think I'm speaking too fast is you just go back to the video and watch it at half speed, and I'll be talking slower in there. But essentially what's going on with a lot of the shadow side is, like I was talking about before regarding people's nervous systems and what they're attracting. To break it down from a more of a scientific standpoint, is like, people in spirituality, they always say your brain is a receiver, right? It's like what you think about is selecting the tuning mechanism for, oh, that's cool. What you're speaking about is, I don't know if you're like in the hacking space, but I have one of my best friends. essentially created the Wi-Fi pineapple. I don't know if you know what that is. But essentially, when we're talking about this aspect of the Virgo energy, you have to look at it like your brain is a receiver and your nervous system is the antenna, right? So what you think about and what's in your subconscious is going to put you in a position of, you know, basically resonating with that space and that frequency, right? So that's essentially the technical understanding of, you know, what you frequently see is your frequency, and what you project and what you put out and what you think about all the time is the situations that you constantly attract. So when we think about that and we actually look at that in that way, we can gain a deeper understanding of this Mars conjunct South Node energy of, hey man, you have been working on the subconscious frequency for too long. Stop it. It is feeling painful now, and it may manifest physically in some. So when we're dealing with that energy and we're dealing with this understanding of what's going on, we need to interpret the fact that, hey, okay, this isn't working. I shouldn't be doing this anymore. I shouldn't be following these patterns, and I shouldn't be experiencing this in such a way, right? And I know I'm kind of like repeating myself with this whole nervous system thing, but it's important and almost the key to what's going on, right? So when we talk about that and we experience that, let me write this down. What to focus on instead. We'll do it at 11:40. Sorry, I'm just writing down the timestamp so I can stay focused. Yo, you're a wild man for that one. So what to focus on instead is essentially like replacing pressure with presence. So when you feel a lot of pressure and you just feel like you're under pressure from what you're experiencing, is essentially people are just focusing on the experience and they're not letting the feelings flow, right? So if you're not letting your feelings flow and they're stuck in your body, what do you think is going to happen? You're going to keep repeating the same experience. You're going to keep getting stuck in that, right? So another way to look at that is sometimes pressure is good because pressure creates diamonds and it makes you stronger in what you need to do and what you need to accomplish, right? But you want to replace pressure with presence, because if you keep coming to the same space and you keep feeling the same feelings, they will just build up and eat at you, and you're basically kicking the can down the line to not experience that, right? So essentially what you need to do is you need to yeah, I mean, sounds like vibes. So essentially what you need to do is you need to reclaim rituals. You got to feel restorative, and you have to stop doing things for performance sake, right? Because it's the same vibe of essentially like getting into emotional numbness through busyness and feeling like you're doing something when you're not accomplishing anything. So you got to honor slowness. You got to keep it sacred. You have to let your nervous system lead the schedule and not the other way around, right? Like if you feel you need to meditate, right? Because what happens when you do that? When you respect your own energy and you stay in the vibes of self-love, you are not, you know, demeaning yourself to what you feel as though you need to do and sacrificing yourself, right? So you're getting into this cycle of trying to work really, really hard for something that if you just practice more boundaries and more self-love and you stayed within yourself, like of course you have to work hard and you have to work towards what you want. But if you actually cultivate your energy and you get into a space of attraction and not chasing, you won't feel this Mars and Virgo energy that everybody's feeling right now, where you are constantly chasing, and instead you will be able to attract it. Oh no. Damn. Because your nervous system is not going to be in the space that you necessarily need to really just attract what is necessary to you and what is truly abundant to you. What the? I'm sorry, I just had a weird experience where my pen just broke. But essentially what's going on with that is people need to, like, they just gotta let their nervous system be on its own schedule. They have to release at their own time. They have to do their own things. So if we were to focus on a journaling prompt from that perspective, what would this look like, right? So what you guys essentially should be journaling, and the topic you should focus on at hand is, what does enough feel like in my body? Say that again. What does enough feel like in my body? You know? So it's like, what would you have to do to feel like you accomplished your goals, right? Because what the Virgo South Node energy is essentially telling you is that whatever you're doing is you're kind of like chasing your tail, or you're chasing the rabbit, or for my people who have I guess you could say substance afflictions, chasing the dragon. You know what I'm saying? So essentially what that is you just have to define it, right? Because people are moving without lots of clarity. People are moving without lots of experience. And a mantra to share is, I release the urgency to fix what only presence can heal. I know everybody was saying that on my live yesterday or the other day. So yeah, so say that again. I release the urgency to fix what only my presence can heal. So when we say that, it all comes back to just feeling obsessed with the need to chase something that you can naturally attract, and avoiding the natural presence and the natural space of what is truly optimized and honest for your own soul, right? Because what we're dealing right now is an issue with a lot of soul authenticity, a lot of true alignment, a lot of just abundance in regards to who you are, what you need to be, and what you actually have to work on, right? Because a lot of people are working too hard and they're not necessarily aligned with what should be. You know, they're not opening themselves up to what they're experiencing, and they're really holding back in regards to just old patterns, old outdated ideologies, and just old things that just aren't meant for the new world. And when I say new world, I essentially mean the vibes of Pluto and Aquarius, you know, Uranus and Gemini, all of these new ideas and new ways to connect with people socially, just bouncing around, holding everyone back, right? Everyone who's watching, like the live and subscribe. Hook your boy up. And if you want to learn and be in a space where you can actually, you know, get these readings on a more, because I'm moving into the sign by sign reading, in a more abundant space, check out this thing called the Alchemist Laboratory, which I have linked in the description, which give people an opportunity to connect and actually learn astrology in a very communal way. So without further ado, let's move into the readings, right? So the Aries reading is going to be on the 6th house, right? And what this deals with is old work habits. They are resurfacing. Health matters need attention, and kind of asking the question of, are your routines nourishing or draining? So what a lot of Aries people have to deal with right now is the opportunity to understand that they are, oftentimes Aries are really working for a lot of people. And what I was talking for in my Aries constellation video that I just put out was people are recognizing that, like, they like to pioneer and they like to be in leadership roles, and they like to be in a space where they are, you know, leading for other people and their reasons, and not necessarily recognizing that they are holding themselves back through the irony of not doing anything for themselves and doing all the things for other people, right? So when we deal with that, and what they're kind of experiencing in regards to that space, is they are realizing that they are kind of dealing with burnout and health problems, specifically due to the fact that they are not working with themselves, right? They're not working for themselves. They're not experiencing life for their own selfish reasons. And I know selfish sounds bad, but for Aries specifically, they need to recognize that, hey man, like, this is what they're doing. This is what they got going on. I know it, the word sounds selfish, but they need to do things for themselves, right? So essentially what they have going on with that is they kind of may get hit with some health thing. They may get hit with some health experience. They may get hit with some like little slight pullback because they're not listening to if their routines are draining or nourishing to them, which is something that's deep and quite important to them, you know? And now we move on to the Taurus, whatchamacallit. Now we're moving on to the Taurus energy, which is, what's the word? Taurus energy is in the 5th house. So the Taurus rising energy that we're dealing with is essentially perfection around their creative endeavors, perfection around their children, dating. They're gonna kind of be reviewing who they're dating and what's going on with that. They're gonna essentially realign themselves with an understanding that joy isn't curated. It's something that's just purely experienced, and it's something that is holding them back in a way that isn't exactly necessary or beneficial in some way, shape, or form, right? So essentially, Taurus's they're kind of dealing with that introduction of Uranus into their 12th house or their feet chakra in a way, where they are recognizing that, like, you know, chaos is back, randomness is back. I can't just be like, "Ugh, let me just like feel some joy for no reason." Duh, 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 you know, like they have to like release that energy of focusing on what's going on. Oh, hey, you're from the Philippines? That's cool. What major city are you by? But yeah, so Taurus is in this space of where they can't like schedule joy and happiness and creativity essentially, so they're just like, let me just, you know, get out here and do whatever, you feel me? Um so that's pretty much what's going on with that. Now, moving on to Gemini. Gemini is dealing with the 4th house, right? So essentially what Gemini has going on is that they're dealing with a shift in their family systems and emotional roles. So it's kind of like they may feel in a space of where they're like a caretaker again, and they have to ask the question of, is this sacred or is it codependent? And that's kind of like an interesting thing to deal with because Gemini doesn't necessarily understand the difference between the two, because how they learn, how they interact, and how they open their minds up to what's possible is they need to recognize that, like, they learn through constant adaptation, they learn through constant shifting, they learn through ebbing and flowing into the space of what is going on, who is in their life, how do they learn. Yeah, I'll be doing Capricorn in about like 7 signs, so just stick around for that, like the live, support your boy. But Gemini's in a space of just like recognizing that how they learn and how they adapt to people isn't necessarily the right way to experience life all the time, because while it is immersive, while it is useful, while it is powerful to learn because you're just like, you know, diving headfirst straight into it, it's not necessarily safe, because what you're doing is you're essentially projecting your energy into the experience, not necessarily the person but the situation, and you're recognizing that, like, this might not be for me. This might not be the space that I truly live in. This might not be the space that is healthy, right? So it's kind of like a catch 22, because it's like what you gain is the entire knowledge mentality necessary to align with something along those lines. But what you lose is yourself in the fact. So Geminis, be careful, because what you will sacrifice to learn and adapt is deep, and you need to pay attention to that. And I say that to myself as a Gemini sun, because sometimes I do that. And I need to not always do that. Now, when we're dealing with Cancer rising, Cancer rising is dealing with the 3rd house. And essentially what the 3rd house is it's a lot of mental clutter. It's time to shift your communication style. And you have to ask yourself, are you explaining yourself out of fear, or are you explaining yourself just to clarify, right? So when we're dealing with Cancers, it's like Cancers care. No, I'm going in order. So I'm on Cancer, and Scorpio will be in 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 signs. So, and I'm writing everything down, so I got the timestamps for all the whatnots. But what we're dealing with regarding Cancer is how you talk to yourself and how you talk to others is a very painful role sometimes. So it's not necessarily bad, but it really can be summed up in the old habit of, are you explaining out of fear, or are you explaining out of clarity and love? Like, what are you doing? And does it feel good? Does it not? Or are you just leaking your aura and your energy, and you're holding yourself back for the you know, the sake of it, just for funsies? You know what I'm saying? So it's an opportunity to be abundant. It's an opportunity to be open. It's an opportunity to, like, you know, recognize that you have set a lot of boundaries for everything except communication. So why are you doing that? You know? But yeah, that's pretty much for Cancer. Once again, ask the question, are you explaining out of fear or love? And is it feeding your soul, or is it draining you? You'll figure it out. Take a pick. Now, moving on to Leo risings. 20 or 30. Moving on to Leo risings. Leo risings are dealing with a lot of money habits, kind of rooted in guilt. They're essentially detaching their self-worth from productivity, and they have to rebuild a value system that is aligned with their soul, right? So what Leos are dealing with is Leos are dealing with just like a lot of guilt around money, a lot of doing things that they're just like, oh, I need to pay the bills, but I'm sacrificing my entire focus and my skills for the alignment of the company's goals rather than mine, you know? So Leos are dealing with a lot of self-sacrifice, which is ironic for Leos because they previously had Mars retrograde and it was a lot of BS. And now they are moving forward into a space of recognizing the sense of self-sacrifice that they experienced for who knows how many months, almost a year, honestly. And essentially, it's an opportunity to really open themselves up and rebuild something that is aligned with their own sense of values and appreciation within that space, right? So it's just like they got to rebuild their systems. They got to rebuild their sense of value. They got to rebuild their sense of love and creativity and all that. And essentially, what's going on is they are just opening themselves up to the possibility of like, hey, like, you know, we're out here, we're doing our thing, but is it necessary? No. Do I have to detach myself from this thing I feel like I need to do? 1000%. But yeah, that's pretty much it. Now let's move on to the maximum. Hey, we're getting close to the Scorpio and Virgo and Capricorn for those that asked. But essentially, let's move on to Virgo, right? So Virgo, since it is the ascendant, is Virgo is hey man, like Virgo is seeing how much of your identity was built on being useful and taking a step back to detox their own internal concept of who they are because they are so deeply focused on being useful and being productive, which is the exact problem that everybody's dealing with. And they need to understand that, you know, your energy is first. Your nervous system should be the most important thing to you. You should be the main focus of you in your life because without that, you can't properly attract what you want. But that's kind of like a life difficulty for Virgo. That's something that always holds them back in a way because they're not exactly as open as they could be. And that can be a problem, right? So it's really going to hit home when Virgos recognize that man, like I spent so much time building myself, making this happen, and it's not it, right? And the main concept that people need to understand about the first house and the ascendant and the rising and like, you know, your general aura field is that your aura field from a sign and astrological perspective shows you what you feel like you should be doing, right? So just like how your sun is like what you see and how you express yourself, projecting your aura field out there is the lens of like, oh, I feel like I should do this, or oh, I feel like I should be that. And the answer is that's not like what you should be doing. That's not the space you should be in. That's not what you should be experiencing. You should always be doing things for you because you feel like it's important to you and it feels aligned in terms of your own growth, right? Of course you got to do what you got to do. Of course you got to pay the bills, but like where is the balance with that? Where is the where do you draw the line? Where do you set the boundaries on who you want to be and how you want to express that? You know? So essentially what's going on is you got to get the concept of useful out of your mind and think about what is productive for the collective rather than everyone else except yourself, you know? Like you include yourself in the collective. And that's pretty much what it is for Virgo risings. They just feel like they should be doing that. Now we are an inch closer to Scorpio. So what we are dealing with for Libra risings is the 12th house. And this gets interesting because the whatchamacallit, I'm just a dude, man. I'm talking about astrology in the States, you feel me? So yeah, so when we're dealing with Libra risings, God no, I am not interested in twinks. You're a funny man. Yo, you fucking bot account, you're wild. So what we're dealing with in the 12th house for Libra risings is spiritual burnout, shadow patterns kind of resurface. They got to cleanse their aura, and it's not just, you know, your space to retreat and people kind of resist, right? So when we're dealing with Libra risings in that way, this comes back to the natural, whatchamacallit. Yo, you could troll a little harder than that, man. Yo, how much of the internet logic controls your minds? Are you even an individual? People say all that stuff like that. I always think about how many corporate overlords control their minds. But with that being said, talking about Libra risings, it's like Libras always feel like they need to bring balance. They always need to feel like they open themselves up into a space of where it's like, I see their side, I see this side, but I also see the third side of what's really going on here. And essentially what's going on with that is they don't really understand how to bring space to themselves and keep boundaries with themselves. And essentially what's going on with that is they need to open themselves up to the opportunities to have space, right? They don't need to take everyone's subconscious blah 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 blahs on. They don't need to take everyone's subconscious mental issues on. They don't need to take everyone's subconscious disagreements with themselves and everyone around them on, you know? And that's kind of the problem of providing balance to people outside of you, is that if you don't do an auric cleansing or you don't do a spiritual cleansing, you will never be opened up to the possibility of, you'll never be able to be yourself as much as you want to, if that makes any sense, you know? So it's kind of like, this is what's going on. It could be better. But do I want to heal them? You know, maybe not. Maybe they got to work it out on its own. Maybe Libra should release that viewpoint and opinion that, like, they need to do everything for other people when they don't. But now, finally moving on to Scorpios. So Scorpios have it in their 11th house. Scorpios, they're kind of recognizing that old friendships or group patterns will come back. Yeah, I mean, that's usually how the YouTube algorithm works. You don't see people everywhere. There's billions of YouTube channels and hundreds of millions of hours of video uploaded every minute, but glad you're here and thanks for showing up, you know? So when we are kind of dealing with the Scorpio rising energy, they're releasing the need to lead and serve in what's going on in their community. And they kind of gotta, like, thank you. They're kind of realizing that they need to serve. They don't need to, like, lead and serve in every community, and they kind of got to redefine their roles of understanding how they got to redefine how they understand, like, just what they need to be, right? Because Scorpio risings always feel like they need to be smart. They always feel like they need to be slick. Oh, come on. Gotta stop dropping my phone. Scorpio risings have to recognize that they don't need to be like that slick person and really, like, open themselves up into a space of, like, damn, people are trying to curse me out in their own language. Wild. But Scorpio risings need to recognize that they don't always have to be that detective person. They don't always have to be smart. They don't always have to be opening themselves up to the opportunity of just, like, being that one cool, calm, collected person in the corner that people respect, you know? And they don't have to be so reserved and feel like they need to be a smart person. They can actually open up and be like, hey, like, this is what I'm going through emotionally. Hey, this is what I'm experiencing. Hey, this is, like, what I got going on in regards to the potential to open themselves up and just, like, stop being so elusive, you know what I'm saying? So essentially what they got going on with Scorpios is they need to recognize their role in the social circle, and they need to recognize their role in the space of just what it means to serve their community and be in a space of opening themselves up into just, like, hey, you know? So they don't have to be so elusive and so, like, leadershipy, and they don't have to be so just, feeling like they're on top of the social situation, because that's the best place to observe people's emotional standpoints, right? Now, moving on to Sagittarius, which is the 10th house, which is pretty good. I have to stop doing that. I need something to hold up my phone. So, yeah. So, essentially, you trolls are funny. You should keep saying wild things. Whatchamacallit? Can you, like, get more creative? Like, you're literally just a regurgitation of your YouTube algorithm. Like, you be more creative. It's, like, boring. But, This is an astrological reading. I keep forgetting, whatchamacallit, like, yeah, I am telling you guys to keep saying wild things, but, like, you could A, be more creative, and B, like, you know, obviously I speak English, so do it in that. No, I'm doing astrology. This is a specific reading over all signs on the Mars in Virgo conjunct the South Node, which is happening, like, next week. So moving on to Sages. Sages, they're kind of in career overdrive. They're dealing with a lot of, like, past ambitions and leadership styles. And they're, whatchamacallit, the main thing is, like, they have to realize that they're not chasing a goal. They have to recognize that they aren't, whatchamacallit, they have to realize that they're not, they have to recognize that they're chasing a goal that is not theirs anymore, or they have to recognize that they're chasing their goal and they should focus on it, but they just have to understand of who is going on. Oh, it's not about ignoring them. I like, part of it's funny, but, like, I just think it's uncreative. You know what I'm saying? Like, when you use, like, broadly cultural words, it's a sign that you are not thinking for yourself. So I just want them to, like, think of something creative, right? Like, whatchamacallit, like, on all my lives, people either call me Justin Bieber, cute, or a twink. And it's just like it's boring at this point. You know what I'm saying? Like, trolling, I love trolling, so it's just like I ain't hating on it. It's just, like, uncreative, you know? So, whatchamacallit, in regards to Sagittarius rising, like I said, career overdrive is an opportunity to essentially recognize that, like, their ambitions may have not been theirs. It's, like, very classic, like, Asian parenting syndrome, where it's just like, you need to be a doctor, and then it's like a lot of kids, like, spend their whole lives being you know, like, the classic stereotype of, like, they spend a lot of times under their parents' vision, they spend a lot of times under their own interpretation, and were living for someone else in a very structured sense, and they need to recognize that, like, is their goal theirs or is it not, right? So it's a weird opportunity to understand the possibility, to just recognize that, like, maybe they spent a lot of times under the guise of someone else's philosophy. So yeah, that's pretty much what's going on with that. How do you know your own zodiac? It depends on the month you're born. I'm going by ascendants and all that stuff. So if you want to just look it up, there's a bunch of sites on the interwebs, such as AstroCharts, AstroTheme, or AstroDienst, if you want to get into it. But yeah, oh dang, I didn't write down the Sagittarius timestamp. You won, trolls. I've been distracted. So yeah, so essentially what's going on with that Sag energy is just like, they gotta recognize that it's not them, might not be them. They gotta focus on their own journeys, and what they're good at is switching up their own philosophies. Now, moving on to Capricorn. Capricorn is the ninth house, and the ninth house is an opportunity to deal with spiritual routines that make you feel stale, reworking your beliefs, kind of like burning off the dogma of, like, what someone else wanted for you, and renewing your soul's education path, right? So when it comes to that, it's like, what do I want to do? What do I want to make happen? What do I want to experience? And is this philosophy that I've kind of lived under what I always wanted? Is it always what I wanted to experience? Is it what I always wanted to make happen? And it's kind of like a space where you can really open up the opportunity to just, like, stop doing old patterns, right? Because this is where it comes back to people on this side of the zodiac of, they don't exactly want to do things for themselves, and they don't recognize how many other people's mentalities and understandings are going on, right? So essentially what's going on with the Capricorn energy is, like, they've just been living under an old, outdated philosophy. They're like, this isn't it anymore. This isn't what I'm going on. This isn't what I want to experience. Like, it isn't for me anymore, you know? So when we talk about the Capricorn energy, like, that's what's going on in regards to who we have, who we want, and who we want to go, you know? So essentially what's going on with that is they're just dealing with a bunch of, like, old routines and old ideas that are just stale and outdated, and it's not what they want anymore, you know? So yeah. Now moving on to Aquarius risings. Aquariuses are dealing with it in the 8th house. So for Aquarius energy, one second, I gotta sneeze. Let me stare at the sun. There we go. All right, dropped it again. I'm gonna stop doing that. Oh man, let me see what the trolls are doing. All right, spamming emojis. Blah blah blah. Well, thanks for the free energy, dog. I don't know who really lost out on that one. Yeah. Past lives. I'm older than I look. Yeah, you know, standard spiritual answers. Yeah. So Aquarius risings, they're dealing with a lot of energetic debts are surfacing. It's kind of like, who do you owe energetically and why? Is it time to reclaim your power and set clean boundaries? Because you know how Aquariuses be, they be trolling. They be understanding social dynamics better than a lot of people. And they open themselves up to the possibility of like, they open themselves up to the possibility of getting like they're gonna have to pay back those debts of understanding social dynamics and essentially opening themselves up to the difference of what it means to really just like they're just opening themselves up to like, hey man, you can't be trolling people like that and it's gonna come back and bite you in the ass. Like straight up, like that's what it is, right? So when it comes to old patterns of utilizing systems of understanding social dynamics and moving like, you know, different ideas and concepts around a public field, it is essentially you know, the old methods ain't going to work anymore, right? Because with Pluto being in Aquarius, essentially what's going on with that is they are opening themselves up to a power dynamic that everybody is using now. Everybody's using social dynamics. Everybody's using a social understanding. You know what I'm saying? So it's a it's not really be yourself, Aquarius. It's more or less like recognize that everybody's on the same wave as you right now and everybody's using the same social dynamics as you, and it's not necessarily time to be lazy. You know, it's not necessarily time to lay claim to old comforts. It's time to reclaim your power, set clean boundaries, and basically do new things to understand people and how they interact, right? Now moving on to the final one, which is Pisces risings. Pisces risings 42 25. Whatchamacallit? Yo, dude. Like, I know you're trolling, but like, you have to understand how YouTube works. I'm explaining. I'm doing the all signs readings of. It's not step out of the box. It's just stop being lazy. That's really what it is. But I'm doing all signs readings for Mars in Virgo, conjunct whatchamacallit, conjunct the South Node. What happens if I'll get to that question after I finish the Pisces energy. But all the trolls, like, you have to, like, for all the time that you spend on YouTube, you have to know that I'm literally getting paid off of you talking crap and you're not improving your life at all. Like, you have to like, with all the time you spend on YouTube, you have to know that. Like, that's like what boggles my mind with this stuff. So yeah, but anyways, Pisces is dealing with the seventh house, so it's like relationship patterns. It's rooted in self-sacrifice, kind of how you showing up. It's really recognizing like all the basic stuff about a toxic relationship. Dude, you're saying your own name. What are you doing? Yeah, for sure. So it's like, whatchamacallit? So it's basically like you have to be present and you have to recognize that like you're not the one to fix your partner, right? You have to recognize that like you are the one that is essentially understanding that, you know, you be you, and if they accept you, cool, and you can work together, but it's like you don't have to lose yourself and all your emotional standing in the focus of what's going on with other people, right? So it's essentially an opportunity for you to open yourself up and recognize that like you just have to be present. You don't have to fix anyone. You don't have to do anything. You don't have to lose your emotions into someone else. You know, like that's what Pisces is. So it's just kind of dealing with the opposite perspective of your partner isn't the ever, you know, shifting project. you are the ever-shifting project and you are dealing with a reflection. So make it work, you know what I'm saying? Now, with someone's question, it was what happens if Jupiter and Saturn conjunction is in the first house of an Aries ascendant? Um, Jupiter Saturn conjunction in the first house is essentially you expanding on the container that you set for a lot of people. And what that is you essentially are recognizing that you like to be a leader. You like to be a, you know, a pioneer for people. You like to be, you know, that like ever you like to be relied on basically, right? And what that does is it's cool because you can learn how to really build and be a like a leader and understand like the showmanship of it as well as the boundary setting and rule setting of it, right? So when it comes to you and your leadership is essentially opening yourselves up. Oh yeah, much appreciated. Yeah, it looks like I got a lot of like Southeast Asian trolls, but hey, you know, watch time. Um so yeah, when we talk about Jupiter and Saturn in the rising or the first house, I don't know what degree it is or what a degree your ascendant is, so it kind of focuses on that. But essentially, what's going on with that is you which one? I live in the States. So what it is you are essentially learning the skills of leadership, and you were going to go through a lesson of recognizing that cultivating yourself and building your own skills is going to have you much more fulfillment, because what you're dealing with right now for the Aries reading is you are in a space of recognizing, I'll get to that next. You're in a space of recognizing that like you're kind of doing a lot of things for other people and you're working for other people and you're being a pioneer for other people, and it feels good because you like the energy of being seen and known and heard and appreciated and valued. But eventually your soul is going to come and collect because you're like you're doing all these things for other people and not for yourself, right? So it's kind of like an opportunity to recognize that, hey, like it's not always for me. It's not I got to recognize what I want to do. I have to recognize what's going on with me, and I have to understand and appreciate the opportunity of cultivating things around my vision and my goal and my excitement instead of doing everything and being a leader for other people, because that is the classic issue with Aries ascendants, because they have that square between Cancer in the fourth house and Aries in the first, which is you're learning how to care for other people and be a leader, but you have to recognize how to care for yourself as well, which is something a lot of Aries ascendants deal with. Now, tulip tie. If you want to really like learn astrology and like do it in a communicative aspect, I have a school, which is a community and like course platform where I like give more specific things about astrology. And if you want to check that out, I have a link in the description to that. So yeah, yeah, of course, I'm happy to answer. Um, what is the next thing? Venus, North Node, and Pisces in the fifth house. Um, Straight up, like follow your creativity, follow your excitement, and your spiritual growth will be really, really easy for you because you have Venus on your North Node. So it's not annoying, and it's in Pisces. So like your North Node in Pisces, it's like all you have to do is just like have fun and basically just mess around and do what you enjoy, and then you'll naturally grow spiritually. Like that's literally it. So lucky you, you know, enjoy. But yeah, any more questions before I dip? The homie Joe's gotta like go eat some food. Sun, Mercury, and Aries in the sixth house. Straight up, you try to have impulse on a schedule. Like that's really what it is. Like you're just like you feel something, you want to say it, you see it, it gives you a lot of ideas and excitement. Yeah, I mean like that's cool. I'll just be that. Whatchamacallit. Like the company name I have under is Solar Systems, helping you understand the system your soul goes into. So yeah, I have a school where I teach people astrology. The link is in the description as well as my YouTube thing. It's called the Alchemist Laboratory, and I essentially just teach people astrology. So if you want to check it out, check it out. It has I have like 10 courses in there. I have group calls where I talk to everyone about astrology and how to make it happen. And then yeah, for sure. And I essentially just like teach people astrology. I have a lot of people that want to become readers themselves in there, so I teach them how to do it, and I teach them what is useful and beneficial there. If you want to see it here, I'll just show you guys. So it's an online school. Whatchamacallit? Here we go. So this is my school. Basically, when people join, I have a welcome thing. So I push people to basically like share their charts in the share their chart tab, and a bunch of people in the community like talk about it and see what's going on, and they talk about their charts. I give transit updates, so it's like I just gave an update on what we're talking about right now, Mars conjunct South Node. A lot of people here are just chit-chatting. Someone posted my live. Someone talked about a reading I gave them. Yeah, I do tons of numerology. And then also I have the library where I give people a guide towards, I basically just give people like free books and stuff for my thing. Let me find this. Yeah. So here's I wrote a moon manifestation guide for 2024 and 2025. You can get it here. A bunch of different stuff that's helpful and beneficial for people. And then also in that, I have all these courses where people can watch and learn about different aspects of astrology. My favorite one is the layers of influence, where I teach people all the different the things like the houses, the constellations, the planets, the asteroids, and I talk to people about. I just tell people like how different styles of astrology, such as Vedic, Western, sidereal, and Chinese, cherry pick different aspects, and I talk about how my version of astrology combines all of that together, and people can utilize that. So, yeah. And then there's numerous other courses, and then I have I have a group call coming up on the 22nd. I haven't scheduled it yet on here, but I have a group call where I give people a forecast on the upcoming solar cycle, and that's pretty much what's going on with that. So if you find that interesting, it's the Alchemist Laboratory. It's linked in the description as well as my channel description and all that stuff. So if you want to find it and check it out, make it happen, you know? But yeah, anybody else have other questions? Oh, Moon and Jupiter. Yeah, I know Eastern astrology. In that course, I literally explain why I don't use it and why I don't necessarily like it. And specifically is because I think sidereal astrology is based on the constellations rather than the house systems. And with that, I feel as though people are cherry picking like specific aspects of it, whereas I like to use all of it for different opportunities and times. And with that, it's kind of like they use the specific constellations, and under my view, I'm like, well, there's 88 constellations in modern astrology, so we can use them all. And I don't necessarily, well, that's the point I'm getting to. I view the nakshatras as a stepping stone of an understanding of the constellations, right? Because I've done live readings with Vedic astrologers, and when I talk from the perspective of the constellations, and they talk from basically the nakshatras are the moon god's perspective of the constellations from 5,000 years ago, we get the same answer. So when we talk about the lunar mansions versus the constellations, I like to just go straight to the constellations rather than a story that is interpreting them. So that's my opinion on that. So that's why I kind of created things that way, you know? But yeah, I don't mean, I've been doing astrology for like 10 years. And I just like studied it because I thought it was cool. And yeah, pretty much that's what I came up with. And the course is live in my school. You can go check it out. Yeah, pretty much. Whatchamacallit, if I do more lives and I get more people that are hype on it, I'll probably do a free trial on it. But as of right now, it's still like a membership. So go check it out. There's a lot of videos that explain it. If you find me on Instagram and you want to DM me or send me an email asking questions, feel free. Yeah. It is. I have Sun and Mercury in the 8th house as well as my vertex. Split between Gemini and Cancer. Yep. Have a good sleep, dog. Is that, Sorry, I thought there was like the Brandenburg Gate in your profile picture for a second. But yeah. That's what's going on. But yeah, you know, if you want to learn astrology the real way and stop straight up bullshitting yourself, check out my school, the Alchemist Laboratory. It is phenomenal. And then, oh yeah, we already talked about Saturn and Jupiter combined in the first house. No, I like numerology.
I mean, like, if you break it down, like, it's basically the same things as the zodiac signs. I just don't like, what is it? I don't like that Bulgarian dude's breakdown of thank you. I don't like degree theory. I think degree theory is a misinterpretation of it. And I don't agree with that because it conflicts with numerology. I already gave you an answer. You just didn't listen. So watch the video back and realize when I was talking to you. So yeah. But yeah, that's it.